Hello, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever it is you're tuning in from. My name is Deborah Awayemi, and you are welcome to another episode of the Bold Conversation. This is a very special episode today because we have with us an amazing individual, a very special someone. And before we get started, I'm going to play. We're going to go ahead and give a little bit of advert, and then we'll go ahead with the proper conversation. Yes, welcome back to the Bold Conversation. My name is Deborah. Um, Now I'm going to be introducing myself before I introduce our esteemed guest of honor. My name is Debbie, and I'm going to be your host for today's show. Right, my name is Debbie, and I am a veteran service representative working with the VA. I'm also serving. I recently just retired with the U.S. Army as a sergeant. But today is not all about me. Today we have a special guest in the House in person of Senator Eddie Melton. I'm going to read a little bit of his bio and then ask him to tell us a little bit more about himself. So, about Senator Eddie Melton. Senator Melton was born and raised in Gary, Indiana, and attended Kentucky State University and later Calumet College of St. Joseph. In his career, Melton worked as the Community Initiative Officer for the Legacy Foundation, a community foundation in Northwest Indiana, and later served as the manager of corporate citizen and community relations for Northern Indiana Public Service Company. In addition to these positions, Melton served as a chairman of the Indiana Commission on the Social Status of Black Males, served on the State Board of Education, representing the first congressional district of Indiana, and served as a national board member for the American Association of Blacks in Energy. This is amazing for a young man like you. To the viewers, I know that they would want to hear from you, and we would like to know a little bit more about who Senator Eddie Melton is. Oh, you're muted, sir. I can't hear you.
Thank you. You hear me now?
Yes,
All right, good.
clearly.
Well, first off, thank you so much, Debbie, and to your entire team, to the ambassador, for allowing me to come on today. Also, want to thank Dorica Rollins for allowing me to be a part of this conversation. So, shout out to Dorica and everybody from Senate District 3 in Northwest Indiana, which is Gary, Maryville, Hobart, Crown Point, Lake Station, New Chicago. That's my entire district. Like you mentioned in your opening remarks, I'm born and raised right here in Gary, Indiana, where I am right now at this present time and moment. I'm just an individual that just have a heart and a desire to serve my community. That's how I was raised. That's how I raised my children, and we're very serious about it. So I'm excited to talk about all those things today.
Awesome. Awesome. Good. The first question I would like to ask you, right? So, reading about you and your background and everything, you seem to be a very interesting person. And one would like to know what actually prompted a man like you to join politics.
It was tough. I was always of the mindset of not wanting to get into politics.
Mm.
I didn't like the initial thought of quote unquote being called a politician. Um, it just had a negative connotation. But the one thing I realized is that I wanted to make change in my community. And in order
Mm.
to make change, part of that is not the end all be all, but part of it, you got to change policy, you got to change laws, and you have to be a part of that process. So there was something that once I learned that as a member of the Indiana State Board of Education, I sought out the opportunity to serve as state senator representing Senate District 3. And at that time, my predecessor was Senator Erling Rogers, who served over 34 years in the General Assembly in this role and this position. So it was an honor to come right behind her and kind of finish up some of the work that she was doing to help and assist our district, especially the city of Gary. But more importantly, just trying to improve the quality of education for the children in the state.
Hmm, awesome. That's interesting. But you see, looking at how so many Black companies and individuals have to work extra hard, to be successful in this time and age, so being a person of color, what is or has been your experience in politics, and how hard is it for you to compete out there?
Yeah, well, I mean, the experience itself is unique. Uh,
Mm,
every room that I walk into, I'm the minority, be it if I'm the only Black, if I'm the only uh, Black male in the room, and then add on to other factors like where you live geographically. So I'm always in a position where I feel like I have to represent a people, a collective. Even if a person did not vote for me, I have to
mm,
represent and be a voice in certain situations and certain predicaments to articulate the cares and concerns and the issues that we feel they need to be raised. And sometimes it falls on deaf ears, and
mm,
sometimes you have to open those deaf ears by advocating louder, protesting. Uh, but the one thing I think is extremely important that folks must know that elected officials can't do it alone, and that's something I've been really pushing in the community where I serve, and I'm so proud of the folks that I represent. That in the last couple of years, I've been seeing them get more engaged, showing up at the state house and letting their voice be heard, saying, "Yes, we may be 9% of the overall population, meaning blacks in Indiana make about 9%.
mm.
We and our voice matters in that process. So it's just an honor. And I don't say that. I know a lot of politicians, quote unquote, may say it's an honor to serve, but no, it's a true honor because you can't take it lightly because people trust you and you have to make sure that you show up and you got to deliver.
Mm. That's amazing. Reading about you, I know I said this to you earlier before we started the show. You seem to be more of a people person. And I know that as a man or as an individual, we always strive to work to go further, right, with our careers. Um, would you put would you put aside serving the people and or pursue your political ambitions? Because we saw online that you actually went for the position of the governor, but you dropped out of it, and you said that I would like to hear more from you instead of just saying what I saw, right? What is it for you really? Is it because of the service, or would you rather stay where you are at right now, as
No,
opposed to actually doing, yeah, okay.
very good question. Well, first off, let me say this: serving doesn't have to start and end with the title,
Hmm,
right? I'm going to do this regardless if I'm elected or not. I'm going to give back to the community whether I'm elected or not. I've been doing it before I was even elected when I started my own tutoring and mentoring organization in our community, and I'm still doing that to this very day. So I don't want folks to understand or look at certain individuals that they have to serve in a certain capacity to give back. That's not true. Everyone, there's certain roles in the community that we have to have folks function in, and I'm
hmm,
just sort of serving in one capacity where that happens. And yeah, it was an exciting experience running for governor.
hmm.
It was bold. A lot of folks thought I was crazy for doing it, but to be honest, it really helped to
Wow.
raise issues.
Very young
It,
age.
no, it raised a lot of important issues. It raised issues that we're actually addressing today in terms of quality education,
Hmm,
healthcare, and a variety of issues that impact not just Black and Brown communities, but low income white communities as well. right?
Mm,
So, with that being said, the one part I did not enjoy or didn't like about running for a statewide office like governor is the fundraising aspect that it takes. You have to raise millions and millions of dollars. And I felt that at this time in my career, I wasn't prepared to make that time commitment to raise the amount of
yes.
money that it would have taken to be successful in that office. So I had to be very honest with myself, my family, and my supporters to say, now is not the right time. Timing is everything. Right?
Mm,
I don't know what God has in the future for me, but timing is essential when you make very important decisions like that.
that is very, very honoring of you to do. And actually, because a lot of people would still put the pride first and not be able to fulfill that assignment. So I commend you for actually doing that and owning up to the fact that you were not actually prepared to get it done. Okay, so I'm going to move on to my next question. So in modern American politics, we see a lot of Black people taking front role in, putting themselves forward for appointment and elections and all of that. Is it safe to say that the quest for equality is actually bearing fruit?
Hmm. That's a tough question, right? Because the evidence shows that there have been some progress made in terms of, yes, some many of us are in elected positions. Many of us have achieved great success in the corporate sector, in entertainment and athletics, but it's still not far enough. We're still fighting to have a black owner in the NFL. We're still fighting to have women receive equal pay. We're still fighting for adequate health care, right? So right now, there's a situation in my community right here in the city of Gary, almost 70,000, over 70,000 people, 54 square miles, and there's one pharmacy
Hmm.
for folks to go get their medication, one functioning full pharmacy, and that's called a pharmacy desert. When you
Wow.
live more and further than a mile away in the United States from a pharmacy in a community that may not have the most adequate transportation, um, that's a pharmacy desert. So those disparities constantly or still are in effect. Not only the disparities, but equity, right? We look at school funding.
Hmm.
Typically, more of the affluent communities are doing better in education with school funding. And it's typically the black and brown and the poor communities that are suffering.
Hmm.
So you have to look at things, not just have we made progress, that's a huge piece of it, but is there equity in the in disbursement of resources? I serve as ranking minority member on the state appropriations committee and the state budget committee. So I'm seeing firsthand and I'm trying to fight to make sure that there's equity across the board when we're talking about healthcare, when we're talking about education, and even within our criminal justice system, which is something that we've been fighting for. We made some progress here in the state of Indiana with House Bill 1006 that passed last session. So there's a lot of work to be done.
Hmm. It is a lot of work to be done. What I hear you saying clearly now is there might be a fight for equality going on at the moment, but it hasn't circulated yet. It is still there's still those injustice done, and the equality hasn't reached the educational sector. It hasn't reached the community. It hasn't reached most like parts where it's supposed, like the pharmacy that you talked about, right? It's you don't have enough resources for that community at the moment, but everyone is saying that, oh, things are getting better, right? So I see where you're coming from with that. In order for us to have equality and justice and liberty for all, right? I feel like it needs to be circulated. Everything needs to be circulated, right? It's not just one community or one sector. So it's a good thing that you see the problem, you see what is going on, and you're actually making efforts to making sure that those communities are well equipped with
Right.
the resources and everything that that is needed. That's awesome.
You know,
Um,
if I
okay,
can add one quick thing to that,
right.
uh, one of the main things that a mentor of mine told me right before I got elected was, no matter the accolades, no matter the praise that you may receive, if your people aren't doing well, if you
Mm,
haven't gotten them out of uh, the economic, social conditions that is plaguing our society, what is all of that for?
right.
I wouldn't rest easy at night knowing that
Mm,
I've personally achieved, but my people are still struggling. So
that's,
that's where you have to give more of your time, more of your talent, and sometimes even your treasure.
mm, that's good. That's good because it's all about service at the end of the day. I know what it's like to actually serve, and but I'd like to ask one question.
Hmm.
Um, Serving the country or serving your community, I know it takes a lot of time and sacrifice. I don't know if it works the same way with the army. I mean, with being a soldier. But as a senator, do you have how do you manage work-life balance and you know family and all of that, and still being able to serve the community the best way you're actually doing it now? How
Right.
how do you make sure that one is not suffering for the other?
Yeah. Well, first, the sacrifice that we make does not compare to the sacrifice that you and those that serve in the armed forces make every single day when you put your life on the line uh,
Mm,
for this country and for so many around the world. So I just want to thank you again. I know I mentioned that before we jumped on, but I can't think of that. My father, he's a disabled veteran from the Vietnam War, so it really resonates with me. Those that serve and sacrifice their life. When we talk about sacrifice and running for office, it is right. And I don't think I was reading a book by former CEO of GE, Jack Welch,
mm,
uh, and that's when it hit me. There really isn't a such thing as work-life balance.
mm,
Is you tell me if there's ever been a time that you've been give equal amount of attention to both your professional and your family at the same time. At any given moment, one thing is going to take precedent over the other. It's the prioritization I think is extremely important because family, God is first for me,
mm,
family, and if it's hard for me if I know that things are my children are sick and they're not doing well, it's hard for me to even function as an
mm,
elected official because as a father, my mind is there, my mind is at home, and I may not personally be there. So it's a tug of war. It's a balance. It is a sacrifice, but at the end of the day, if you give it your all and be intentional and making sure that your family knows the work that you're putting into that,
mm,
it will make it easier for everyone knowing and they see the fruits of your labor. Uh, that you're trying to change the community, you're trying to change and make it a better future for those in the community that you're serving.
That's awesome, and that's a great response right there. You know, family first, God first, and then family. That's a good way to serve. If your home is not in order, there's no way you can put your community in order. So that's a good one right
You
there,
can
sir.
do it, but it's not going to be easy.
It's not the reflection. What how your home is a reflection of your community.
Yeah.
But I see that you're doing awesome and you're doing amazing. So I commend
Thank
you for that, sir.
you.
The next question. Before we go on to the next question, I'd like us to take a short break, or yeah, we'll take a short break and then we'll answer questions from the chat. Okay.
All right.
Alrighty. Okay, welcome back. Welcome back. All right, we're gonna take the first question from Owolabi Williams. He said, "What are your top priorities for improving public education for young people of color?"
Yeah, very good question. Something that we constantly fight for. The
Hmm.
top priority on that is adequate funding because our teachers, if they're not paid adequately, it's hard for them to do an effective job. If they have to dig in their pockets for school supplies, they have to worry about making the ends meet at their own home. And it takes a toll and effect on that. So raising teacher pay has been an extreme, a top priority for myself and our caucus. In the same vein, on the public, on the funding aspect, making sure that our schools are equipped with the technology and resources. And that's something that right now, even in my own community, that we're struggling with. A lot of people in the United States are receiving a lot of federal funds right now, and there's a huge federal investment and even state investment when it comes down to K through 12 education. But we have to make sure that it's spent in a transparent way. It's spent in a way and invested in the technology that's needed, in the infrastructure such as heating and cooling systems. It just hurts my heart when I walk into the school and either they're too hot or they're too cold, uh, or there's a leaking roof. Those are not conditions that our children should be in. So that's something that we're still fighting for, even in my own community, to make sure that's addressed. So then also trying to figure out, uh, on the home front, right? And this ties into the public education piece of it. From raising the minimum wage is extremely important. And how does that tie into education? Well, we want to make sure that our families, that they're not struggling on a day-to-day basis, right? If you're able to raise families up out of poverty, the likelihood of that child being more successful or achieving in school will be greater. That they're not worried about an unstable household moving from home to home. They have food on the table. So raising wages right now, we have a significant amount of households that are raised in non-traditional homes, meaning either a grandparent or a single parent is raising a child, and they need the resources because things like childcare is constantly going up,
Yeah.
transportation is going up, inflation and everything is going up. So we have to make sure all those resources are in place for families so children can be successful, which will make a successful community.
Mm, awesome. That's a very brilliant answer. So I'm gonna ask you this question, sir. So before now, blacks and people of color, were usually referred to as Negro, or treated as second-class citizen, right? So, but as we see it now, calling someone black or Negro is deemed offensive. What do you think has changed over time?
Well, I think it's a couple things. I think over time, when you watch documentaries, I think there was a documentary recently I was watching on Netflix about James Baldwin and Malcolm X. Right, I am not your
Mhm.
Negro, and you even heard blacks during that time calling each other Negroes, right? And I think that was more of a cultural thing during that time frame,
Mhm.
uh, for us to say that. Where I'm from, you use the old James Brown song, "Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud." I'm proud to say that I'm a black man in America, right?
Right.
So I think as a mindset that we have to look at, but it's the respect as well that we have to show each other when we started using certain derogatory names, that I'm not going to use on air, right? We got to be careful with. But I think
Yes.
it's in terms of we are reaching past the time that we have to empower one another. We have to lift each other up.
Mhm.
And some examples, right? And this might go off the beaten path, but typically when one of our brothers and sisters start a business, we always ask for the hookup.
Right.
I mean, or a discount, but we don't do that in other communities.
Yes. Yes.
I'm using it as an example to say that we should go out our way to make sure that we reinvest in our own communities and reinvest in our brothers and sisters to make sure that they're successful. Be
Absolutely.
be it with capital, right, financially to economically lift them up, but also in a positive way to kind of
Mm-hmm.
speak life into their businesses, speak life and success into their families. So there's a lot of negativity that we see every day on social media. There's a lot of negativity that we see here in entertainment in general. So I
Right.
think we have to go above and beyond and being intentional on how we communicate with each other.
Right, absolutely. I see that a lot on social media. People will be like, people would rather go elsewhere, and buy that popular product, they used to. But when your own brother and sister, tell you, hey, support my product, support this, and you say, oh, I'm fighting for black equality, I'm fighting for this, but you're not supporting your own. You have to start from your home. You have to start from your sisters and brothers, and that's how we raise the community, and that's how we get up there.
I'm gonna
you
give
know
you another example real quick, if you don't mind.
yeah, go ahead, sir.
A very good friend of mine, close friend of mine, his name is Damon Dash. I'm sure you are familiar with Dame. Has been a media mogul, in
Mm,
the fashion industry, in movies, music, you name it. And here's a black man in the United States that has his own television network with Dame Dash Studios.
mm,
And this is an example of us. We should be going above and beyond to support that brother, right?
right.
For example, this network could be partnering with Dame Dash Studios,
Absolutely.
collaborating to help kind of spread your message and distribution.
Right.
So I use that as an example. How do we start networking and start
Mm,
connecting the dots to figure out how we can grow each other's business and just improve our communities that way as well?
that's how it should be. That's how it should be. Thank you so much, sir. I'm gonna ask a question or show a question in the chat room. He Owolabi Williams said, "Appreciate your efforts, Senator Eddie. Can you talk more on the mentoring program you mentioned in your community?"
No, I'm excited to do that. Right. So I mentioned my buddy Dame and I have a mentoring program called the Youth Commission. And right
Mm-hmm.
now we have it in the local high school here in Gary, Indiana, where we have about a dozen young black men that we're mentoring in entrepreneurship. Uh, we encourage going to college. We encourage, achieving out of getting out of high school, but we want them to be well rounded. We talk about mental health. We talk about personal health. We talk about financial management and starting your own business. This just past session, and Dame has joined us via virtual platform through Zoom and talked specifically about how to start a business and having different revenue streams within that business.
Right.
And these young men, they're range from the ninth grade to the 12th grade. It blew their mind to think that here's a black man that's come from a similar community, such as myself, that's extremely successful. And he's sitting talking with me and giving me the blueprint.
Hmm.
And that's the main thing that we do in our communities, giving them access, giving them opportunity and exposure. And that's something I'm extremely passionate about, giving them exposure in both going to places, be it if it's talking to people that think differently and exposing them to different music and different foods. It won't be a shock and surprise to them as they get older and they start traveling the world, or if they have the opportunity, we'll encourage them to want to see and do more. So it's called the Youth Commission right here in Gary, Indiana. We have support through Geminis Corporation. A variety of donors have supported the youth, and I'm excited about it. I'm extremely proud of those young men.
That's good. That's good. So is this like a community? Just it's just you said it's the youth commission. So
Hmm.
it's not so you all don't go to the schools to reach out to them. They how do they let me put this question this way. How do they get in touch with this opportunity?
We
You
went
know,
to we went to the school. We told
okay.
the school that we want kids that are struggling, that are on
Oh,
the verge either not being successful in their class, their academics,
Oh,
uh, those that have been truant, not showing up to school.
hmm,
We've been working with them over almost a year now. So myself, uh, Ellis Dumas, Markel Watkins, and Jeremiah King, all are partners with me on the ground. Dame, Congressman Andre Carson, Bishop Purnell, Dr. Chris Purnell. Those are individuals that are part of the commission of adult commissioners that either specialize in healthcare, specialize in history, government, and everyone has been able to pour into the youth. I mean, look what we're doing right now. We're talking virtually. So
right.
I said, why can't I tap into my national network to allow folks to empower these young men that's right here in Gary, Indiana? So that's what we're doing.
Hmm. That's a great way to tackle a problem. You see, some people would go to schools and pick the honor roll students, the student with all A's that is excelling, and bring them out and forget about those who are actually struggling. So that's the problem right there. If we're able to go to these schools and actually pick, I've never heard this before, sir. I've never heard this before, or I heard it done anywhere else where you go to a school and you pick the struggling students, the ones who are running away from school, the ones who don't want to do anything. That's a very smart way to tackle the community's problem because once you're able to figure out what the problem is and you take the problem and turn it around for the good, because it's also going to help out the community. It takes them out of the streets and it also, helps them for the future as well. So I really appreciate you and your team for everything that you do. We really appreciate that.
Thank you. And I appreciate all the mentors, all of them as well.
Yeah, I appreciate you all, mentors. I'm gonna read this. He said, Mr. Owolabi said, "Thank you for the work you do with BYMOC. I lead a mentoring program for boys and young men of color, Boys Day Foundation. I would definitely connect with your program. Thank you
Yep.
so much, sir. Thank
Let's
you."
do it. I'm always passionate about that. I used to work with a variety of individuals across the country, and we helped during the time frame when President Obama was in office with the My Brother's Keeper initiative. So that
Mm.
was extremely important. That work is still going on all over the country. So I'm happy to join in wherever I can.
That's good. That's good. So I'm gonna ask this question about foreign investors, right? How are you looking at foreign investors making impact in the economy of Gary, Indiana? Are you open to that? People
Mm.
from, you know, overseas that are
Yeah,
not Americans coming to partner with you to actually invest in the economy.
no, absolutely. I think right now we're positioned, well positioned to do so. That's why I got to again send a shout out to Ms. Rika and her efforts in trying to bridge that gap uh, with our country in the continent of Africa, especially with the city of Gary, Indiana, a majority black city in the United States to have seen its fair share of turmoil in terms of economic crisis. My good friend, former Mayor Karen Freeman Wilson, used to say it was an economic tsunami that
Mm,
hit the city of Gary. And, I have to kind of give you that perspective on, where we are today. You know, in 1968, Gary was the first city uh, next to, we got Ohio, city in Ohio, to elect the first black mayor in the country. And if you think about that time in that era between 1964 and 65, when you had the Civil Rights Act, you had the Voting Rights Act, and just a few years later, you see the assassination of Dr. King, and you see the assassination of Malcolm X, then boom, you have the first black mayor in the country, and that took
mm,
place in our city. But during that time frame, you see an economic downturn that was almost systematically designed and set up, where during that time frame, you had a law. It was called a buffer zone law that did not allow a neighboring community to be established next to a major city. It was a buffer that was removed, and there was a new town that was created adjacent to the city of Gary. Right. So think about that. So there was during this time frame and his leadership of a new emerging black leader in a country, not just in a city, you had an exodus, and it was a term called white flight that took place. That a lot of the white-owned businesses left the community, and
Mm.
residents started leaving the community, and so you started seeing a population decline. Uh, then you speed up around the 70s and 80s. Then you had the kind of the downsizing of industry.
Mm.
Gary was created because of U.S. Steel, the world's largest steel producer, is right here in our own hometown. And at one point, Gary, U.S. Steel had almost 20 to 30,000, if I'm not mistaken, employees. Right now,
Mm.
we have about 3 to 4,000 employees. That has a huge impact on a city, especially when you're dependent and relying on one industry. So that's why innovation and entrepreneurship and collaboration, not just in the from a state or community perspective, but on a global scale, is extremely important.
Mm.
Just a few years ago, we passed some legislation that would open up our lakefront for future development, um, where we're trying to establish Gary as kind of that new transportation hub for North America. Gary is one of the few communities that has the assets that we have. Now, check this out. You have a majority black city that's 30 minutes away from the world's third largest economy in Chicago.
Mm.
I could leave out my house right now and be downtown Chicago in 30 minutes.
Oh, wow.
So you have that as an asset. You have the lakefront of Lake Michigan as an asset, the world's largest fresh body of water, uh, right here.
Mm.
Take in consideration the transportation asset. We have an international airport, the Gary Chicago International Airport, where a lot of private flights are leaving, but a lot of cargo is coming within the United States and from country, state to state within this city itself. So figuring out how do we grow the import export business is extremely important. But when we look at transportation with cargo, Gary is the only city right now that has three Class One rail lines that goes
Mm.
directly through it. Canadian National, CSX, Norfolk Southern, all go through Gary, Indiana, and we have the landmass to build transportation, warehousing, and distribution for folks to build and distribute their goods throughout the entire world.
Mm.
You can leave Gary and be anywhere within amount of hours if you put it on a train, if you put it on a plane, and if you put it on a truck. If you look at the map of the United States, most major highways, or this, let me just use this as most major rail lines, all converge in the Indiana, around
Mm.
Chicago and Indiana area. So going east and west, north and south, this is the crossroads of America.
Oh,
You
wow.
folks can do the research. Indiana is the crossroads of America. So if that makes Indiana the crossroads of America, what do you think a location like Gary, Indiana is going to be for
Mm.
those that have the resources to invest and be a part of a narrative of a renaissance of a city like Gary, of turning it around and bring it out of the economic condition. Once we start raising our tax base, more industry in terms of not industry that's going to pollute, but industries that's going to help raise property taxes.
Mm.
Industry is going to bring in and hire more individuals who raises our income taxes. And there are so many other ancillary things and where folks start their own jobs to be a supplier to certain companies that are doing warehousing and distribution. So that's what I've been going around right now. I just left Virginia with Dame and myself and a good friend of mine talking about these good things and sharing it I'm on a crusade right now just to go out and just really spread that message.
Hmm. That's awesome. So you're saying that if I was a pharmacist and I have to, you said that there's one pharmacy um, in a particular community and it's a very large one, but it's just one, and people have to travel, you know, to go over there. If I know we have a lot of amazing, young, talented, and brilliant doctors and nurses and pharmacists in Nigeria, and a lot of them have been migrating over here to impact in the community in America, right? So are you saying that because a lot of them are here right now listening to you, that it's going to be an I don't know what the process is, but if what are the process put in place for a foreigner to come in and start up something or open up a pharmaceutical company or a shop where so everyone can get access to medications. How
Right.
easy can that be done for a foreigner or someone or an investor from a foreign country?
Well, I would have to do the research in terms of what that would look like, but
Okay.
I can help make those introductions on a state level or what regulations and things of that nature
Mm.
that has to be done. But with any type of investment or any type of entrepreneur that's looking to establish in a new community, I would suggest connecting with those that are doing some of the similar things that's from that community. So
Right.
we can kind of help recycle that dollar, help recycle that mindset of just kind of lifting each other up and partnering with each other in a more collaborative way.
Okay.
But I think it's a tremendous amount of opportunity that is worth the dialogue and conversation and figuring out how do we start building some sisterhood, brother and sister type of uh, relationship with other parts of the world.
Hmm.
And we just can't close it off. We can't operate in a silo and keep ourselves closed off from the rest of the world or even the rest of the state and the rest of the country.
Right. Right. Okay. I'm gonna ask a question from the comment. Um, Elizabeth Awayemi, that's my mom, asked, Honorable Debbie, please ask the senator his role and how he is working towards reducing and combating the high rise of alcohol and drug abuse or drug among the youth, among the black youth.
All right. That's a good. You said that's your mother?
That's my mom.
I'm
Mm,
um couple things. So I could speak specifically about vaping, right?
mm,
They looked at the vaping as an addictive drug because it still has tobacco in it and it can serve as a gateway for youth. That's something that we're constantly fighting to further regulate to make sure that children don't get their hands on these vape pens that's
mm,
popping up in schools.
right.
Because it's you can't smell it. They're very discreet.
Yeah.
So that's something that we have to be very aware of. And one thing we have to also realize is because of the pandemic, there's been a significant increase of individuals that have suffered from mental health
Mm,
uh, and are looking for substances to kind of alleviate them from depression. So, and that Indiana has one of the highest suicide rates in the country. Uh,
wow.
so I just, we have to check on our children. We have to ask them they're okay. We have to open up and ask them if they want to talk. So they're not turning to wanting to harm themselves, hurt themselves, or turning to any illegal substance that can, just damage them for the rest of their lives.
Mm, wow. Okay, thank you so much, sir. Another question. What policy framework is the senator putting in place? One second. Is the senator putting in place for gun control in the United States? Recently, I read a news about a man who was really, really, really broken because his, I think, 4-year-old daughter shot herself by
Mm.
accident, and I guess his going to be going to jail for that. But how do you regulate? What's the policy? Just like she said, how do we control
Yeah.
um, this in the United States, or starting from our
Yeah.
community?
You know, that's a that's a tough one. It's not a tough one in terms of coming up with solutions. It's a tough one convincing my colleagues that believe that guns, uh, we just have a different philosophy on guns and guns in the hands of certain folks. And I'm disappointed in our state. I'm gonna be very honest with you. We
Hmm.
just passed a law. They passed a law. I voted no against it. That doesn't allow them to have a permit to carry a gun in the state of Indiana.
Oh wow! So you don't need a permit.
No. So
That's
we're
ridiculous.
one of those states that are that have been pushing for more or opening it up for everyone to have guns. Now, this is what I will say about that. Majority of those folks that support the legislation, they
Okay.
don't live in our communities. They grow up, they go hunting, they grow up, they as children, they know how to use guns, and it's more of a cultural thing, right?
Oh
And
wow.
when I stood on the Senate floor and I told them, to you, this might seem like a good thing or a positive thing, but to me, this is going to cause lives to be lost in our community.
Yep.
And they still voted to support it. So that's going to be something we're going to constantly fight against in terms of lessening the access to guns and not letting them fall in the wrong hands with folks that have mental health issues. Making sure protect individuals that are on, uh, uh, I would say, have some type of protection from those that are seeking to harm them. And I don't see it improving in Indiana anytime soon because they're seeking to compete with other states such as Texas and Florida, uh, uh, that are trying to be more progressive in having guns more readily available for folks. And I just don't agree with that. I'm not against folks carrying or having a gun that have gone through the necessary background checks. I'm not against folks having a gun in their home to protect their home if they, can rightfully do so. So it's a slippery slope when you're in a state that's passing these type of laws.
It is ridiculous. I'm sorry to say, but it's it's not safe. It's not safe for anyone. Why would you want to compete with another state? That I don't know what the mission is. I don't know what it is they're trying to do, but this is about to be a war because if everyone says they have the right to own a gun, it means you have a right to kill, and
Well,
you
they
should.
even dropped it. They dropped the age requirements from 21 to 18.
That's even worse.
Yeah. So there's a lot of issues surrounding that, and it primarily rests in the hands of big business or not sorry, big industries, lobbyists that certain lobbying groups that have the funds uh,
Mhm.
to push these type of uh, pieces of legislation in certain states. It's an effort across the entire country. Just do the research. It's the same bill. It's the same language in a lot of places that they're trying to get this done.
So why do we have the police? Why do we have the military? Why do we have them if everyone wants to fight for themselves by taking justice in their own hands? I just feel like there's really no need for that, and hopefully we have more people like you who would fight against this, and hopefully it changes. I don't know, but this is not good news. But thank you for your honesty. I appreciate that, sir. So when it comes to politics and business, do you think women have a seat at the table in terms of making decisions?
In politics and business, I don't think it's enough. I don't think they've had an equal opportunity. especially within business. I know I've seen a lot of different studies when it comes down to the pay disparity between men and women in certain roles of position. And that goes to my earlier point about, lifting families out of poverty. When you have more women raising children, of course, that's going to have an impact if we can raise wages and make it fair and equitable across the board.
Mm,
When it comes down to politics, you may see some progress. I think there's a lot of room for improvements. Um, I'm a type of person. I was raised by a strong woman. I was, all the women around me taught me the value of having strong women helping to lead. Right, I know some phenomenal leaders right now. Now, I would say both uh, specifically in the Black community or in minority communities, we can do a better job at mentoring our own. Right, and I'm
mm,
not just talking about kids. I'm talking about young professionals, emerging leaders,
right.
to help give them access and know how to navigate the corporate waters, know how to navigate the political waters,
Mm,
and how to get and move forward in society,
mm,
right? And in a respectful way, where you're not selling your soul or uh, you're selling yourself short, and knowing your worth and your value to make sure that you can do that, achieve, and get to where you need to be.
awesome, awesome. That's good. Thank you, sir. Hopefully, so it means that we have a seat at the table, right? And there's more opportunities for us out there now, right, than back
Yeah,
then. Okay, that's good. That's good. So, do you think you have more pressure and expectations being a black man? It's one thing for you to be a young man who went for the seat, right? Who wanted to be a senator at a very young age. It's another thing to be a black successful man. So the expectations from the community, from the people, a lot of people are watching you. You could be the next Barack Obama. You never we never can tell. So like a lot of eyes are on you at the moment. Do you think the expectations of you are different as opposed just a regular senator?
I don't know. I try not to. You try to remain humble. Number one, right? And you want to be realistic with yourself and what you can achieve, because you have to be realistic to the people that you serve, because
Right.
you don't want to set false expectations.
Mm,
I don't want to set an expectation that I could deliver something and I know I can't. Right? That's not good leadership. That's poor leadership. So for me, it's I don't worry about, is the world watching,
mm,
or what folks may say. Now, I didn't operate that way. It took me. I had to mature, because there was a point in time when I did worry about those type of things. But now that I've matured, as long as I know that I've received all the information, I've balanced out what may be right for my community or the folks that I'm representing. And if I feel in my heart that I make the best decision, I can sleep easy at night, and I'm gonna
mm,
keep fighting.
right.
And it sounds simple. It is hard, because you have to balance emotions and communications with folks to let them know if things are going well or not.
Mm,
Uh, it takes a toll emotionally on yourself, on your family, on the people around you. Uh, you just have to have a good support system. My wife, she does a phenomenal job in helping me, in staying grounded, and with the children. And so I have a great support system, um, and I couldn't do it without them. So it's really, I have to share that.
awesome. So we have with us Mr. Owolabi Williams, and he's joining us from Canada, and he's going to be asking you some questions. Mr. Owolabi Williams, we'll welcome you to the show. And if you want to take over, go ahead and ask the senator your questions. We can't hear you, sir. I think you're still muted. I don't know. You're not muted, but we cannot hear you. No, we can't.
Oh, now,
Yes, loud and
all right,
clear.
good job. I got to take this off. I think that's the issue right there.
Oh,
All right. Thank you so much, Senator Eddie. I appreciate you. Thanks for all the work you do. I've heard amazing stories, most especially when you want to know where a man is coming from, you listen to that story. And I think you're going to make a great history in the history of America, the United States. So thank you for all you do. Um, pretty much when I heard you talk about what you do in your community with mentoring programs, I just felt a nudge in me that, you're working with young males. So I said I was going to ask you all of those questions I asked in the chat line, in the chat box. However, I've worked with boys and young men of color in Houston, Texas. I used to be a juvenile probation officer with Houston County, Addis County rather. So, getting into working with boys and young men of color, both in Houston and New York, Buffalo, it's kind of the same challenges everywhere. And you've mentioned three things. One is the influence of drugs, and the new advent of how we have experienced the evolution from the normal smoke to vaping and all of that, and the chocolate drugs and all of that we have right now. So, I just want to know because I know one of my friends said something sometimes ago, and that has stuck with me working with boys, right? So he said that we keep raising the fine girls for the crazy boys, right? So I mean I took it upon myself prior to then to start working with boys because I was raised by a single mom as well, back in Africa. So I know what it is. So my question is at that level, I know you mentioned a lot of funding for from the federal government. My question is at that level, at the level of the Senate, what are the provisions that is being made for the male child that is developing? And if they are none, what are we putting in place to ensure? Because there is a lot of programs, honestly speaking, for the female every time. So it doesn't come to me as a surprise when you have the female doing well in grades in school and all of that, and you have the males dropping out of school. So what is the provision the Senate is doing to ensure that we also give the boys a seat on the table?
Right. Man, very good question. So I'm gonna approach it a couple of different ways. Number one, as a senator, right, and I'm gonna approach it as a father.
Mm,
So as a senator, I would say that we aren't doing enough. When myself, now out of 150 members in the legislature, so that's 50 state senators and 100 state representatives, there's only 14 black people.
mm,
So when we come to our community and we draft legislation, I work with you guys, we write a bill, I take this bill and I ask them to give it a hearing, and it falls on deaf ears,
mm.
and it's frustrating.
True.
Uh, so when we want to get something specifically done for our communities, we have to pull the community in. We have to do a better job at telling the story and using uh, data
Mm,
on why it's extremely important. For example, the infant and maternal mortality rate in Indiana is dismal. We have more black women and black babies dying than any other race in the
mm,
state.
mm,
They know that. The data's there. Same thing when it comes down to majority of black boys that are dropping out of school. The
mm,
data's there.
mm,
or those that are either being suspended from school and truant. You worked in that population before, so we have to start taking this data and being a little bit more intentional. And I'm saying this is across the entire country, and saying we have to be very specific and direct on how we're going to address these issues.
Mm.
Typically, when we bring these issues forth, our colleagues that don't look like us and don't live in our communities, they want to attach it or to a broader umbrella,
Mm-hmm.
a catch-all, so everybody can. That's fine, but we know historically that blacks in this country have been underserved, have been mistreated, have been beaten, hung.
Mm-hmm.
Our communities and policies have run rampant in terms of locking up black men
Mm.
uh, from a criminal justice perspective. So there's some skin in the game that the states and the country have to invest in and not hide it,
Mm.
and trying to help
Mm.
this population achieve. So I get frustrated. This, this is no way directed to you guys, but I get frustrated because we can yell at the top of our lungs, and until we have a colleague that will support our initiative to help us move it along, then we're just going to be yelling and we're going to be fighting and we're going to keep doing that. But we got to do it in a way that's strategic and is showing the facts and the data and say, look, you owe us.
Mm-hmm.
This state owes us. We've helped build this country. We helped build this state.
Mm-hmm.
We got to do strategic and intentional investments, not just in black boys, but in our communities
Yeah.
and for everybody. All right. So that's the Senate side of things. As a father, I have two young boys. I had a son that's 13, I got a son that's 12 years old. And even as a father that's in the house, I'm aware that there are influences that I have to protect them from.
Mm.
And I can do a better job at making sure that they are aware of when these influences arise, how they address them or how they not engage with it. Right? When I grew up the total opposite. Right?
Yeah.
So I've had my run in. I don't want to go into a whole lot of details, but I've had my issues with a variety of things that I'm not proud of. But it has shaped my mindset, and we're supposed to want to see better for every generation after us.
True.
Right? So we were all young at one point, and our parents would tell us something, and we'd be like, they don't know what they're talking about.
Sure.
But sometimes we would take it different from another person
Mm-hmm.
that wasn't our parent.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking at your shirt. That's what mentoring is about.
Mm-hmm.
So how can we invest in programs such as mentoring that's a positive influence on more young black men throughout the country in those communities that deserve it? We have to give them more exposure. My wife and I were just having this conversation about our mentoring program about
Mm-hmm.
uh, we want to take them out of town. We want to take them to Washington, D.C. We want to take them to uh, the Smithsonian Black History Museum, right? And get them out of the barriers. Before I went to college, I had never been outside the city of Gary.
Wow. True. I believe that.
I had never been outside the city of Gary. And it was a culture shock for me at 18 years old to leave home. And I had to adjust. Right. So I want to touch on your funding piece just because, and this is talking to us as a community. It was a brother, his name is Benny Muhammad here in Gary, Indiana. Brother Benny told me this. I said, and I was young at the time. I said, Brother Benny, what if you don't get the grant to run your program? He said, brother, I'm going to run it anyway.
True.
because this is the work I was called to do.
Mm.
And that's when it hit me like, we can't guarantee or bank on funding. You can look at the policies, they were trying to pass a law in Indiana and across the country to prevent any form of Black history being taught,
Mm.
right? Now that we see this coming down the pipeline, we were able to stop it here in Indiana. But now
Good.
that we see this, and I've been talking to a group called OSG, Off School Grounds. It's a phenomenal group that Dane talks to on a weekly basis, led by Dr. Dennis McKeezy. That's it. OSG says we need to create a curriculum. We should be creating a curriculum right now because we see it coming down the pipeline that they want us, our children, not to learn certain Black history. They don't want them to know that slavery existed in this country,
Mm.
right? So just because the school doesn't teach it, just because the school or the state doesn't fund it, should we not, as a community, teach this to our own children?
Mm.
Who's responsible at that point? It's us. It
True.
falls on us. So it's either in our places of worship, either in our after school programs, in the community on the weekend. We should be having sessions where we should be able to say, hey, come learn about history uh, of our people.
Mm.
So I'm sorry, I might have went down a rabbit hole on that one.
Um,
It's
I
okay. Thank
appreciate you. Yeah,
you
I
so much.
appreciate you. I appreciate you so much. I would most definitely connect with your program, and thank you for all you do. Thank you for all you do, and for your service as well.
Where are you located right now?
Yeah, right now we're having something going on in Toronto, Canada, but I'm between Toronto and Buffalo.
Okay, nice. Yeah, yeah, you're not too far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate you, Mr. Olabi Williams, for jumping on. And to round up this session, this amazing session, I would like to ask you one last question.
Mhm.
So, what are 7 lessons, or probably a few lessons you've learned being a senator, and your advice to the young people who are aspiring to be in your shoes one day?
Mm. Number one, trust God. Uh,
Mm,
I think that's extremely important. Being grounded and believing in a source that's greater than yourself is extremely important. Um, Number two, make sure that you are able to be there and support your family. Um, I will also add that giving back is extremely important. No matter what you've achieved in life, uh, if you move away, find a way to come back and give back.
mm,
Sometimes that doesn't necessarily mean relocating or moving back, but find a way to connect with the organization to figure out how to constantly have an impact on the lives of those in the community. Don't give up on yourself.
mm,
I think oftentimes we may run into obstacles that we feel defeated, but it's in that defeat. That's why I keep this picture of Muhammad Ali here in my home. Good friends with his one of his daughters, uh, and there was a quote that Muhammad Ali said. He says, "Service to others is the rent we pay on our space here on Earth."
mm,
So I try to keep that at the forefront of my mind and my heart in terms of giving back and serving. But I also look at here you have one of the most flamboyant boxers, just very braggadocious, but he was humble enough to constantly tell folks and show, not just talk about it, but show folks, show the world to give back. And to me, I look at uh, folks like Muhammad Ali uh, as kings, right? And that came when we were blessed to have them come to this world, and they were models for us. Uh, I mean, I can go on and on a few things, but I think those are just a few aspects I would just encourage folks to also keep their minds open, wanting to constantly learn and evolve and grow. Always look to invest in yourself,
Right.
um, be it from understanding more of economics, understanding more of what's going on in the world, but look for opportunities to invest in yourself. It's going to benefit both your family as well as the community.
Awesome. Thank you so much, sir. I really appreciate your time. I know you're a very busy man, so thank you so much for being here. I also like to thank Mr. Olabi Williams for jumping on to ask that question. Also, would like to thank our chief producer, Miss Derica, for actually, putting this together, and also Ambassador Stephen for, giving us this platform to be able to speak and impact a lot of lives. Thank you so much, sir, Senator, for actually giving your time to speak to amazing individuals out there who are trying to be just like you. God
No,
bless you,
thank
and
you.
I appreciate you. So I would like to end this show with a popular saying on this platform by our very own Ambassador Stephen. He always says, "Together we aspire, together we make great things happen. For we can, we will, and we must." Thank you all so much for tuning in. Thank you to all the people who commented on the section on the group, the comment section. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. Have a good one, and we hope to see you soon, sir. We hope to come, pay you a visit, a courtesy visit, and appreciate you for your time and effort. So, God bless you, and have a great one, sir.
You too. Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.
Wait till you dey wait for. You no need to stress at all, at all. Say if I don't dey for us, make we jolly dey go. Even small pikin, mommy, daddy, take a life for you. Oya bruku tutu komaro, sisi eko abeg no dey slow. Tani bank better life promo, you don dey yafu for you. Wait till you dey wait.
The Zenith Better Life promo season 2 is here, and it's bigger and better. 20 lucky customers will win 150,000 naira each every 2 weeks between now and January 31st, 2023. To participate, simply open a Zenith Bank account and maintain a minimum balance of 5,000 naira. Request, pick up and activate a Zenith Bank debit card, virtual or physical. Download and register on the Zenith mobile app or sign up for the star 966 hash easy banking service, and you could qualify to win. For more information, visit www.zenithbank.com/betterlife. Experience the better life with Zenith Bank. Zenith Bank, in your best interest.